It's quite interesting for me, illuminating the market reaction last week to the relief over Gary Cohn staying as part of this administration and Steve Mnuchin. Do you think there's a belief out there, and particularly in Washington, that without both of these two men, this administration has zero probability of executing anything like economic reform?
Well, these are two of the men that the markets, I think, are looking at as figures that can deliver something, figures that can hold to the economic policy promises that President Trump has made, and try to make something of them. I think the president's behavior in the last few weeks, and his conduct on a variety of issues, ranging from Charlottesville to his feuding with Mitch McConnell to the threats of a nuclear war with North Korea, that has not inspired a lot of confidence. So yeah, certainly these two figures are being looked at, but again, it may be more wishful thinking than necessarily a reality-based assessment, because if any of these things are going to happen that the president wants economic-wise, it's got to come from him. Yeah, it makes total sense. In terms of tax reform, Sahil, I want to ask you about this, and just firstly let our viewers listen into what Steve Mnuchin had to say about possible tax reform in US companies specifically.
We have one of the highest stated rates. Yet it encourages companies to leave their money offshore and pay a lot less taxes. So we have to fix this, and fixing it is going from what we refer to as a worldwide system to a territorial system, where we'll tax companies on the US income and we won't tax companies on the worldwide income.
That was quite exciting, wasn't it? Just as I was talking about tax there, as you can see, we're seeing that total solar eclipse there, and we are showing you images of that now. Quite incredible. But anyway, let's talk about tax. Continue to talk about that, Sahil. Slightly less exciting, perhaps, than a total solar eclipse, and hopefully more frequent. We obviously got a little bit more detail there about tax reform. Are we still expecting some kind of announcement in September? Because clearly, in terms of the legislative agenda here, they've got a lot on their plate.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I think the Republicans in the committees in the House and the Senate that work on taxes are not necessarily expecting anything more from the White House. They think it's on them now. There was this Big Six so-called joint statement before recess in July that, in their view, kind of set the parameters very broadly, and now it's going to be up to them to move from there. So it remains to be seen. I don't know that the president and the White House have necessarily promised that something's going to come out, and there's been a little bit of waffling there. So it remains to be seen.
Do you get the sense that GOP members, congressmen, are trying to distance themselves to a greater extent from President Donald Trump? I read a lot of column inches again dedicated to this over the weekend. We had Paul Ryan once again posting on Facebook today saying, once again giving his views about what happened with Charlottesville. Do you get that sense? And we were talking about this earlier on the show about Steve Bannon. Do you think his exit actually changes things and actually facilitates policy?
Well, on the second part, no, I don't think so. I don't think it means a lot. I think President Trump and Steve Bannon think alike. President Trump had his campaign platform and his message that was, anti-trade, anti-immigration, nativism, sort of stoking these grievances well before Steve Bannon came aboard. So yes, he fueled those, but he did not instigate those. What was your other question again?
I was just saying to you about the prospect of policy going forward in terms of, necessarily what this White House can achieve. Let me move you on actually and ask you something else.
Right, no, Republicans distancing themselves, yeah. I think you mentioned. I think in Charlottesville that's absolutely true. So, on a certain level, I think it was unacceptable to the vast majority of Republicans. I don't know of any exceptions that the president drew this moral equivalence between the neo-Nazis and white supremacists in Charlottesville and the counter-protesters who were trying to stop that, who were trying to push against that. So yes, I think that could be an inflection point among Republican lawmakers, that they start to feel more comfortable opposing the president and at least feel the need to do that. You had Cory Gardner, the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. His job is to elect Republican senators, came out very early and very strongly saying this is not okay. The president needs to be more forceful about that. So this is something, to watch very closely, because if there is a break, I think it could mean all sorts of problems for the Republicans.
I just want to make the point again that we are inching ever closer to that total eclipse, which are the images that we're showing you here. As you can see, a moment ago we had that upside down smile. We're now showing you viewers of people watching this momentous occasion. Not happened, or the last time an eclipse traveled across the entire country like this, it was in 1918. So we are still showing you those pictures.